What is an interval? If you have ever wondered what an interval is in music, I have the answer to that question today. Hi, I'm Jenny from the Musical Homestead, and today we are going to be studying intervals in our theory track. You have found our elementary theory track, which is for the kindergarten through 5th grade learner. If you want to know what an interval is and you're in 6th grade through adult, you need the Theory Musica Track, made just for you, and we're going to answer the same question. I'm going to link that in the description below. We are studying our textbook, The Fundamentals of Piano Theory, and for those of you following along, we are in Unit 5. We're learning about intervals. It's on page 24. If you want to pick the book up and follow along with us, I'm going to link that in the description below. Now it's time to answer our very important question. What is an interval? Are you ready for the answer to our question of what is an interval? An interval is the distance between two notes. And I'm going to demonstrate that to you today. Today we're going to be talking about the size of an interval. We're going to just be talking about a few different sizes to get started and introduce what the interval concept is. In the future, we'll be talking about the quality. So if it's major, minor, augmented, diminished, we'll talk about those things in the future. But for today, all we have to worry about is the size or the spacing between the two notes we're talking about. The first one we're going to talk about are seconds or steps. When I go from one note to the next note, that is a second. So this white key to this white key, that's a second. I also want you to notice I'm going from one letter name, C, to the next letter name, D. Our pattern is going C to D, that's a second, or it can be called a step. Up here, I go A to B, and so that's our second or step, and then E to F, which is our second or our step. On the piano, this is what they look like. Now, on the musical staff, they're going to look a little bit different. Before I introduce how they look different, I want to introduce these two words, melodic and harmonic. Those are two different ways that you can write intervals. The first one we're going to talk about is melodic. I want you to think about your favorite song that you would sing. As you're singing that song, at least for me, I can only sing one note at a time. It's called a melody. One note at a time. A melodic interval is when we play or sing one note at a time. On the musical staff, a second is going to follow our pattern. So remember, when we talked about how the lines and the spaces work, the pattern goes line, space, line, space, line, space, line, space, line. So down here, we have a line note, and if we go up a second, we go to a space note. I also want you to notice that this is going up a second. This direction is up on the musical staff. This direction is down on the musical staff. So this is up a second. Now over here, this is a harmonic second. A harmonic second, I think about this. If you and your friend got together and you wanted to sing and make beautiful music, you would harmonize and you would sing two notes at the same time. These two are being played at the same time, so this is a harmonic second. We still are using our pattern of space, line, so I go from the space to the line, that's a second, 1, 2, and it's harmonic because they're stuck together. I'm going to play them at the same time. So you want to remember, melodic, they're played at different times. Harmonic, they're played at the same time. Both of these interval examples are going up. To know if the note's going up or down, we always start with our first note, and then we look at the second one. We see, does that go up or down? And this is going up on the staff, this is going down. So I look and I say, that is going up. So this is a melodic second going up. Now we're going to move on to a third or a skip. When we look at our piano, we're going to always start with our piano. When we look at our piano keys, a third is when we go from C, we skip D, and we go to E. Now, did you hear what I said? C, skip D, go to E. That's why I like to call this a skip, because we are skipping D. He does not get to play. Same thing with G, we skip A, and we go to B. So our third or our skip is when we go from G to B, or over here, C to E. We also can count them. This is our first one. We would say 1, 2, 3. That's a third. And same thing here. 1, 2, 3. that's a third. Anytime we're skipping a note in between, then we have a third or a skip. Now let's go down to our musical staff. We have our two terms, melodic and harmonic. Melodic, melody, one note at a time. Harmonic, harmony, two notes at the same time. This is kind of the cool thing I want you to look at. When we do it on the staff, a skip is always going to go from a space note to a space note, or a line note to a line note. Noticing over here, this was my first note, my given note. I went up to the note higher and I did a skip. So we're skipping this line. If I put a little X right there, we're skipping the line in our pattern, space, line, space, line, space, line. Same thing over here, I've got line to line, and I'm skipping the space in our pattern of space, line, space, line, space, line. You always want to make sure with harmonic that we line them up, other than the second. If you remember on our last example, the second, you can't line them up, so they're going to be right next to each other like they're buddies. But all the other intervals, you want them to be up and down, right on top of each other, so we know we're playing them at the same time. These are examples of our thirds or our skips. You always want to make sure you're listening to the directions and reading the directions as you're doing it. Sometimes they'll tell you exactly what note they want you to write. I have what kind of notes here? What are these notes that I've written? I have written whole notes for my example. I could very easily use half notes or quarter notes or eighth notes, but for my example, I've chosen to write whole notes for my example of thirds or skips. We've talked about seconds and thirds, and now we're going to move on to fourths. And for this example, we're going to start with our piano, and we're going to look at my numbers. C is the first note that we've been given. C is going to be number 1. To get to our fourth note above 1, we count 1, 2, 3, 4, and F becomes our fourth note above C. When I play C to F, I am playing the interval of a fourth. Now looking over here at this A becomes 1. We always want to count the first note. 1, 2, 3, 4. D then becomes the fourth. So this is our interval. A to D is a fourth. Now when we look down here, we look on our musical staff, we have our melodic versus our harmonic. Melodic means one note at a time. Harmonic means both notes at the same time. Over here, I have counted our lines and our spaces. We start with our space notes. So we have space is 1, line is 2, space is 3, line is 4. So 1 to 4, this is A to D, that is our fourth. Over here, our harmonic, remember, should be lined up, and it's the same thing. Line notes 1, space is 2, line is 3, space is 4. This is our fourth. Now when we're looking at this, I want you to notice something. If you remember, our third was always going to be a line note to a line note or a space note to a space note. Our fourth is always going to be either a space note to a line note or a line note to a space note. I want you to start noticing these patterns in music. It's going to help you recognize intervals really fast, and it's also going to help you when it comes time to play these intervals on the piano. Our pattern, space to line is a fourth, or line to space is a fourth. And I really want you to start memorizing those. The last interval we're going to talk about today is a fifth. And we're going to start at the piano first. Start with C being our first note, and let's count up. Count with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. C to G is a fifth. And over here we have a D. D is our 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A is our fifth. D to A is a fifth. Now down here on our staff, we have our melodic and our harmonic. Melodic, say it with me, what does it mean? One note at a time. And harmonic, what does it mean? Two notes played together. I have it written out here, so we have our space, line, space pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A space to a space. Now wait. What was our other interval that was a space to a space? It was a third. So a space to a space can be a third or it can be a fifth. And when we look over here, we can see we have our space is 1, line is 2, space is 3, line is 4, space is 5. So I've got our fifth over here. If it was a third or a skip, our note would be right here. Space to space, we're like skipping the skip almost. That becomes our fifth. Remember, keep memorizing that. So space to space is a fifth. And if it was a space to a space right here, that would be a third. You've got it. Now we know the answer to your question of what is an interval. An interval is a distance between two notes. We have just started our interval journey. There are intervals all over and there's so much more to learn. So I have some fun things I want you to do to get better at intervals. First, I want you to look at your music and find intervals. Be an interval detective. Maybe you can find some harmonic seconds or melodic thirds. I want you to look and see what you can find. Then, if you've been following along with us in our textbook, there's some pages for you to do. So make sure you take some time and do those pages. I'm going to link these in the description below. In the pink section of these flashcards, there are interval cards. It's a great opportunity to get better at intervals. And for those of you who have been around, you know here at the Musical Homestead, we like to have fun as we learn music. So there's some games that I've created. They're going to help you learn your intervals. I'm going to link those in the description below as well. If this is your first time, or if you haven't already, do me a big favor, click the subscribe button and turn the bell on so you don't miss any of our fun games and activities. That helps me to create more content for you, more learning games and more fun ways to learn music. Until I see you next time, remember to have fun learning music.